Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the Dating Wars podcast. Really happy to have you. I'm bringing a really beautiful interview episode with Sheree Mack your way today. We talked about Sheree's experience of the pandemic, about wild swimming and reclaiming a place in nature as a Black woman, about the magic of her multimedia memoir, and about tending to grief through ritual and a connection to nature. Sheree and I have been in a writing group together, as you'll hear me talk about, and I just really love her creative spirit and her presence in my life in general. It's given me so much inspiration already, and so I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I just want to share a few tiny updates from me. Thank you so much to everyone who bought and shared and reviewed my book. I'm really so happy it's finally out there. It's called Rituals, Simple and Radical Practices for Enchantment in Times of Crisis. And I'll link to it in the show notes. In the last episodes, I read the introduction to you, so if you're interested, you can listen to that. And yeah, reviews really help a ton. So on my website, I'm listing a bunch of places where you can order it online and still support small local bookshops, which is super important to me. And yeah, you can also at the same time while doing that, leave a review on any other platform, and that really helps. So thank you so much. Also, if you get the book in paper form, I would love to see a picture and feel free to tag me. I am taking next week off. I'm really excited. I'm just tying a few loose ends today. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to be swimming in the sea and hiking a ton. And I'm going to do some tidying. I feel like doing a deep clean in my house, processing some stuff, decluttering while listening to podcasts, having naps, that kind of stuff. Really excited and really need that. And so afterwards in September, I'll be back with more episodes for you. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'm sending so much love your way. Hey everyone, welcome to an interview with the wonderful Sheree Matthews. I'm super happy to speak to her, and I want to tell you how we met. So, as you know, I've written a book about rituals, and Sheree and I have been in a support group called the Writer Studio, which was run by my friend Sophie Dale, who's also awesome. And I really feel so clearly that Sheree has supported my book in ways that I wasn't understanding at the time. Like her feedback and her comments were so heartwarming and uplifting. We were mainly communicating on Voxer, and as you will hear in a moment, Sheree has this beautiful voice, and just receiving her voice message just really made the process of writing this book so much easier. I felt really seen and supported, and I was really excited to learn more about her work. She's running a podcast called wait. Earth, Sea, Love, which is about women of color in nature. And so Sheree is also a wild swimmer like me, and a writer and a poet. And so we have this really cool interest of overlap in interest, and there's just so much that I'm excited to talk about. That was my little fangirl waffle, Sheree. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you, and really grateful that I get to ask you some questions.
Oh gosh, that's a lovely intro there. Thank you for the invitation, Yarrow. I am pleased to be here. I'm really excited about talking with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So the first question, really any of these questions, you can take in any direction that you like, but since we're recording on the 24th of July 2020, I would love to hear what you're grieving at the moment and what the pandemic has been like for you so far.
Oh gosh, where to start? Well, I think the pandemic started for me and my family before anyone else, because I had friends around the world and they were saying things about the virus. And for a moment there, I was thinking, oh, well, it's not on our shores. We're okay. I'm sending my support and help to them. And then, the beginning of March, it seemed to take a turn. And I was getting more and more fearful for my own body and my family. And it got to the point that I self-isolated maybe a couple of weeks before the official government. And that was because I I didn't feel safe, and it was silly me self-isolating, and the rest of the family were going out. So I was sort of like bringing in my body's clothes as a way to protect and control, because I have issues with control. So I wanted to control, and I think that's the thing that's hit me the most with the pandemic, is like realizing I've got no control. All those constructs that I might have had in place, you know, my role outside there, project coordinating, getting out into nature, meeting friends, and this is my normal life, and that just went. And the thing is that I felt that I'd spent years in the process of making it up to this point, and for it to all go like that, and even if I made that choice and then officially it was taken away, it was a case of like, oh no. I was in a very dark place. I will admit I was in a very dark place, because everything that I knew or thought I knew was just gone, and I didn't know how to operate in the new normal, even though it didn't feel normal. Yeah, so there was a lot of grief, for the life that had gone and the life that is what to come. So how I worked it was to just stay in the day, stay in my present moment as much as I could, and my creativity helped in that. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster, because as we just said at the beginning of the conversation, I'm now in a really good place that I'm thinking, yeah, let's stay virtual. I like virtual. And again, it comes back to control. I can control what I'm doing when I'm virtual, you know, when I want to get on a conversation with anyone, when I don't want to see anyone. I mean, like this Zoom thing, you can decide if you want to be seen or not. And I was in this meeting, this workshop, and they're saying, oh, hello, Sheree, is that you? Are you in? Put on your mic and put on your video. We need to see you. And I just went, and I didn't put on my video. I just said, hey, bad connection. You'll not see my face.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that's answered your question.
I think it totally has, yes. And I resonate with a lot of that. I also started isolating earlier because my mom is chronically ill in Germany, and I had to move houses at the end of February. So I had to pass through 3 airports on my way back. And then I got sick when I landed here. And late February, really, it was not so much on my radar. I also thought it was this virus out there, far away from us. And then I got sick and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And so I also started isolating, I think 2 or 3 weeks before official lockdown in the UK.
Yeah.
And that felt like the right thing to do. But I love that you named that it was a really dark time, because it really was. And I think not many of us were really able to articulate that at the time. I felt like there was so much of a rush of Zoom meetings and workshops and things. And in a way, like, it makes sense that that was our response. That was definitely my response as well. But I think it was so disorientating that I couldn't even have said at the time, this is what's happening in my body. I'm grieving. This is so hard. I'm disappointed about what I've lost. I feel not nourished enough by Zoom things, because I'm so anxious and out of it all the time. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
I know that food and drink for me got a hammering.
Oh, yeah.
Real good. I would send my hubby out to the corner shop and like bring back the donuts, the crusty bread, the crisps, and the wine. And I know that was a coping mechanism. I can see that now. It was a coping mechanism. I have got it under control a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to treat myself with grace. So
yeah, good for you. So I know your words from as we mentioned, and I feel that the act of going out into nature and connecting with the body of water in this really deep way is a way of making space for grief as well, isn't it? I wonder what your experience of your local landscape is like, and what it feels like for you to swim at this time.
Oh, now you've opened a little treasure box for me. And I knew it was important to me have a relationship with water, with the sea. but it hasn't really hit home until now, this pandemic time, and especially with the Black Lives Matter uprisings. It has been a healing process. It's been my medicine, and I know when I'm not taking my medicine. So just Sunday morning, again, I'm having sleepless nights, and I think I must be on the change here. My body is maturing into a wise woman, and I accept it. But yeah, so it was another sleepless night, and I thought, hey, I'm going out to meet the sun, and I'm going to meet the sun on the sea. So I was out the door 3:30. Chilly. Oh my gosh, it was so chilly. And sun hadn't risen, but I got into the sea. And while in the sea, the sun is rising, and you see the pinks, the reds, the oranges, the golden light on the sea, which was once, it was black. It was like this metal liquid, black color. And then when you see the light hits it, it's like, oh, I just gasp. I gasp in all the glory of it. And I just see it as a blessing to be here doing this now. And that's what it is. I'm brought right back into my body. Oh my gosh, it was so cold. I had this iceberg in my core for the rest of the day. I couldn't get warm, but in a sense, it was like a reminder of like, well, you know where it's from, Sheree, don't you? You've been in the sea today, haven't you? and then it was like, oh yeah. And I'll cuddle myself a little bit more. And it is my self-care and my self-love to have that connection, that nature connection. And it is at my fingertips. And I could say, and I do know, and I do recognize that I'm privileged in the way to be able to live here, to be able to get into my car, to get to the sea, to be able to get into the sea wearing a costume and then come out and get my dry robe on. I know these are all privileges, and I acknowledge them. And that's why I do the work that I do, to get more bodies like me out there, because once you realize that it's a human right to have this connection, and it is just there, it changes your world. It sort of like encapsulates your world in these protective hands that are there to hold you no matter what shit you're going through. And that's how I felt when I was at the sea, with the sun coming up, and I was in that body of water. It was one body of water holding another body of water. and it was magical, and it was now, and everything else would just float away and let go. But of course, I didn't just go and take. I did say thank you. That was a lot of the time. I'm like, oh, thank you for this. And I'm not going to get into that. It's like, who am I saying thank you to? I'm saying thank you to Mother Earth, right? That's who I'm saying thank you to. And that's enough. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, I totally agree. It changes your life, and it gives you this container and this space to turn to, and it's so nourishing, and it should be available to everyone, which is why I love your project and your work so much. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about why and how you started this podcast and what kind of conversations you have?
Okay, thank you. Wow, where to start? So I'm a writer and an artist, and for many years I was wanting to marry my Blackness with nature, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it when I was physically out there in the landscape. I couldn't see anyone that looked like me. And when I was writing, I couldn't see anyone else that was writing like me about Blackness and nature. So I would do these, I don't know, experiments or workshops to get more bodies like me into nature. And it showed to me that there was a demand, there was a need, and that it was just a case of so many barriers in place of us not doing it. So, you know, there's the financial one, having the money to get on a bus or have a car to get there, information, where'd you go, reception, so many barriers. And as I say, I'm not your usual run-of-the-mill Black woman, because I have been brought up in a white society. So I've got ways and means to fit in or be accepted within a white society. dampen my light, not to be too much. So I know the rules and I know how to play the game. So that's come in useful for me to plonking myself into areas where you might not find Black people or Black faces. And that happens to be in the countryside out there. And that also happens to be in like organizations where you can apply for money. Yeah. I've come adept. Is that the right word? Adept at applying for money or knowing what pots to go for, especially if they might have that title on of Black or Asian or ethnicities, that these organizations need to diversify and make things a bit more inclusive and equitable. So that's where I slip in and I help them do that. So funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund. I've got to get that right because they've switched it round, they've changed it. But approaching them and saying, hey, we've been trying to do this group that I've been working with, Identity on Time, we've been trying to get more people out into our natural heritage on our doorsteps. Can you help us do this? So we had to do this long, drawn out application, but we got the funding, and the funding is there to get rid of those barriers, those finances. We hire a coach of us. This is like a coach load of Black, Asian, and ethnic people go out into Northumberland and just walk the landscape. We go out sometimes with buggies and little kids, and we're just like, we are stepping in the foots of our ancestors, if we think about it. If we're on the Hadrian's Wall, where we've had Somalians and we've had Belgian and we have, Arabs, we've had so many different ethnicities along in this area, but it's not there, it's hidden. So we've been walking the landscape looking for our ancestors and also just connecting with each other in the day-to-day. But doing it in a group has meant us, we felt safe. It takes away that fear factor of where we're going and who's going to be there and how we're going to be received. Doing it in a group creates a connection with the landscape, with each other, and with ourselves. So that's what we've been doing. But then part of that has also been training Black women to become leaders themselves, because we've had to depend on the usual leaders, expedition leaders, rangers, who are usually male and white. So we've had to depend on them to take us out. But now we've trained up a bunch of women who can lead our groups themselves out there, and also camp overnight. And also, if anything bad happens, we're first aid trained. We've got all the certificates, yeah. And I find that we need to do that. I might have been doing it ad hoc before, but to be recognized by other people, you need these qualifications. You need to prove that you are an expert in this field by doing this training. When really, we're all experts of having a relationship with nature. We just need to tap into it and given those opportunities to do so. But yeah, because that's the other thing. Sorry, I'm going off topic, but that's the other thing, the idea that some people have demand or ownership over this part of the land and what they're going to do with this land and who has access to this land. And I think that is so wrong. Mm-hmm. That isn't the case, and that isn't how Mother Nature operates. Yeah, this tree, it doesn't say you can just grow to this boundary or this fence. You can go wherever you want. We're all free to do that, as long as we're respectful for each other. And we know this tree gets on with that tree because they communicate, don't they? You're right, son. I've got some extra vitamin C. Do you want some? You know what I mean? So yeah. But I could chat for all ever. But you asked about the podcast, didn't you? Sorry, I didn't mention that bit. So the Earth, Sea, Love podcast has just come out, just went live last week, 13th of July. And that came about because it was written into the budget that we would collect our participants' voices while they're out in nature, and start changing the narrative that way. But because of the lockdown, we stopped. We stopped in March, when we were just going to kick off our spring and summer stuff. And that's because of safety. We couldn't guarantee people's safety. But we wanted to stay connected still with each other, with nature, and with ourselves. And that's when we have sort of like pivoted the podcast a little bit to include more voices, expanded those voices to not just the participants in the program, but then also people that we've been in contact with, international. And I say people, but these are all women of color. These are all the voices of women of color. And I'm using that so we can include, you know, brown, Black and Asian. And so it's trying to be that inclusive way in the different ethnicities, because, you know, that's another discussion we could have about the different terms that we use, but we'll not go there. So yeah, we're sharing our stories about that nature connection from childhood, now, and in the future. And it's been so good, so good for my soul to be doing this. It has, yeah.
I'm so happy you're doing this. Thank you for sharing. So you touched a little bit on the beauty of your local landscape, and I would love to know more about that, where you live and what nature is like, and kind of how you read the sea, and when you know when to swim and when not to.
Oh, that's a good one. Because I think I've been doing this for 5 years, wild swimming. And I took it up because I wanted to do the Great North Swim that was in Windermere. And before that, I would always go into the sea, but just my feet, you know, paddling. And that would be a case of like, whenever I see the sea, I need to be closer, touch the sea. And I think that's from a kid, whenever we got that coach load of people from my village to the sea. So I moved to this area. Me and my family moved to this area after a traumatic experience of a miscarriage. Oh yeah, we had one child, and I fell pregnant. Like, big surprise, but that didn't, you know, she didn't come to fruition. So we needed a change of scene, and it was a case of like the time between first child nearly going to high school, and it was a case of we make the break now before high school. We don't do it. So we downscaled and we moved to the sea, and we moved to a flat that you could actually see the sea. And I know that was the best thing for me to do at the time, for me to heal, my body to heal, my mind to heal. But again, I still didn't go in my whole body. And there was a fear. There was a fear because this is a white area, and I've not only seen my own Black body on the beach. Okay, my son, he's got a Black body too, but he was at that age now. I'm not going near the sea, you know. So there was a fear about getting into the sea, because you're totally exposed. You are exposed. But then it was a case of, I knew how I felt when I got in the sea. And I felt like a kid again. I felt giddy. And it was bitter cold. And it got to the point that I would squeal with it as well, and not bother that I probably made drawing more attention to myself, because it was more important to express myself. So yeah, so that's how it developed. And I did for a time join a swimming club, the Panama Swimming Club, which is along the bay, because so I'm telling you this. So we moved to Tynemouth, which is at the mouth of the River Tyne. And this has a long sands, a long beach, and that rolls onto Cullercoats Bay, and then that goes on to Whitley Bay. So the club was in Whitley Bay. And, you know, I learned a lot from going into the sea with these women and some men, but it had to do it at a set time, set days, only in for a certain amount of time. And it was good to do it for, you know, going with the group. Yeah, with the group. But I'm not very good on doing the rules. Following rules. because then that's, in a sense, it takes away from the spontaneity of it, on the enjoyment. So yeah, so I started to do it independently anyhow, and that's all year round. But it would have to be before school for a certain time it was. So that would be sometimes in the dark. Or then before lockdown came, it was just after the school drop off, because we did have another child who's now 10. So it would drop her off and it would be like 10 to 9, and then I'd get in and it would be quiet then. And I'd take the sea, whatever it would be, in or out, in or out. But my favorite time is when the tide is in. Probably because I don't have far to go, maybe not. But I just feel like it's so full and so plentiful then, and I just love it then. Because, so, you know, my favorite is Cullercoats Bay. We have a national lifeguard post there. Is it lifeguard or life rescue? You know, the ones that go out in the boat, they can launch from there. So there's a lovely bay there, and they actually have a number of swimming clubs and that go from there. One's called Cows, Cullercoats Outdoor Women Swimming, Cows. And they've asked me, do I want to be a cow? And I said, no, you're all right. Because again, that would be others telling me, got to go in at this time, or we're meeting at this time. So now I do go in, and I do consult the tides sometime as well. Get that up. And that's why it was so of a good time on Sunday, because I knew the tide was in, just when the sun was rising. I thought, wow, how many times do you get that just like that? Probably every 2 weeks. But I thought, no, this is a prime time. And it was the actual anniversary of my mum's death for 21 years. So that was a good time to get in as well, you know, sort of like, it wasn't so much as a ritual, but there was something in my back of my mind saying, okay, today's the day, or maybe you should go today, or, you know, it's funny how our body remembers these things. Yeah. So I think I live about 5 minutes in the car, 15 minutes on my legs if I'm moving fast to the sea. Yeah,
that's great. So happy to hear that you have that, and feel similar about the tides and the richness of when it's so full and overflowing, and you're like, oh, getting in there. Yes. Yes. I also can sense so beautifully that your practice in the landscape is informing your creativity in your writing. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Maybe especially with poetry, that's something I would really love to get back into. And I feel like I almost have this romantic idea of kind of like being whispered a poem by the waves and coming home and writing it down. Do you know the magic trick of how this works? Please tell me.
Yeah, well, just on that last bit there, the bit coming home, don't come home, stay with the sea and do the writing there. Because that's what I was getting into. A habit during the pandemic was to go to the sea. I got this special black bucket so I could pop it down on the sand. If the tide's out, I could go right up to where the tide shoreline is, plonk my stuff there, strip off, go in, and then come back out and get ready there. But I got in the habit of doing that into the sea, getting on my dry robe and drying, and having a flask of coffee and my journal with me there. So still sitting in the vicinity of the sea. And I say sitting, okay, the most of the time I go there, nobody was there. So, but I wouldn't sit on the benches. I'd sit on the rocks or the sand, because somehow they're cleaner than the bench at this time. But I would be still sitting in the vicinity. And while my body was still open, after it'd been open from being in the sea, then I'd tap into my other senses and just record them, just get some notes down, you know, those squawking seagulls, that butter honeycombed rock, you know, that sort of thing. And I'd just pluck them out and just put them in my journal. And then once I'd got home and I thought, oh, should I start trying to manage these or put them into some kind of hole, or just leave them? And then when I had an idea for a poem, I would think, oh, look, I could go back to those notes and find them. So that's what the immediacy does help. And as I said prior, I was having this experience with nature, but I couldn't find me in literature, black body with nature. And I thought, well, I can't write nature because, like, Wordsworth, he's the guy, isn't he? Him and his romantic poems. I mean, that was the standard to go to. I thought, well, I could never get there, so why bother? And I did do a lot of searching. I must say, physically searching. I went over to Washington State on a residency there about the relationship with the land. And I found the Black Nature book by Camille Dungy, which was the Afro-American context with nature, but I was having trouble finding the UK one. And I was striving, I was really working hard to try and marry my blackness with nature. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, to talk about my experiences, but then have it illustrated or mirrored with some language of the landscape. You know, the green hills, writing about a blue-green mountain or being in a lochan. And I felt that I was forcing it together. And I think, and I can say that now, I think it was because I was still finding my way in my relationship with nature. So I was struggling or trying to lean too hard into a quality or a confidence that wasn't there yet. Because now I can say now, I just do it, I write, and it's informed by nature because that's part of me now. It's not anything that can be separate, my blackness and my nature loving self. It's like it's all together, mashed together. So, and the other thing is that I don't really have to be talking about race all the time either. I don't have to keep talking about blackness. I can write about anything, grief, dogs, you know. But there is that expectation of being a writer who happens to be Black, that I would write about Black stuff. And sometimes, yeah, I'll lean into it, but sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I just want to talk about that flower there that looks like a triffid. That freaks me out when I see it. But there's an uncanny beauty about it. I just want to write about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that makes sense. I think the way you think and speak about creativity is so permission giving and so wide. And I'm really excited for the memoir that you're writing. And when I first heard you write about it, or you mentioned it's a mixed media memoir, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. And I really want more people to know about that, because I think for me, for a long time, it was the case that I thought, oh, writing a memoir in just one form of writing, that's a huge commitment. And I don't know if I can stick to that, if I have enough to say, if it all will flow. And so when I heard a mixed media memoir, I was like, oh, tell me more, please.
Yeah. And it was Sophie that helped me with the mixed media title in that sense, because I was describing it as a creative non-fiction piece that was filled with essays, poetry, photography, image, and you know, it was a long drawn out thing. And she goes, oh, so you mean mixed media? I went, yeah. So I've taken that on and I'm running with it. But yeah, and I think it's because I know I'm a creatrix. Yeah, I make, I create. And that crosses the usual boundaries. I allow whatever wants to come up and be expressed in whatever way it wants. Yeah, it could be how I'm arranging the strawberries and blueberries on the top of my porridge. Yeah, that's how it might want to be expressing itself. And that's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from, it's all about me expressing me to me, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
So if that comes out in a poem, it comes out in a poem. If it comes out in a short story, it comes. But for me, it's just writing, or it's just being creative, or it's just playing with my art supplies. And it's when it goes out in the outside world that it wants to be labeled and put in a specific box, you know, like some people say, what do you do? And okay, so I say I'm a writer and artist, but then there's times when I say, I'm just a creatrix. And you see a blank expression. And I'm waiting for them to ask. Some people ask, some people don't. But yeah, so this mixed media, mixed media, mixed genre, is, as I've said, it's essays, it's poetry, it's my photography, it's my visual journaling, spreads. And I'm doing that because it's to express the last 5 years of my life. And it hasn't actually been linear or neat. There's been spiraling and circling and so much learning, and there's a transformation. And I don't feel that it could be contained in just your linear, normal memoir. I just don't, I just can't, it doesn't feel that way to me. And I suppose that's how it is coming out. It's coming out through it's coming out through my body, because it is, I say it's about a Black woman's body with/in nature. So that could be with nature, in nature, within nature, you know. And that's the premise. That's the central thing that will appear in all the essays or the poems. But there's some shifting, there's some movement, there's some repetition, there's some remembering, but that's the one constant thing. And I hope that people can access it at any level that they're at, wherever they are now, and get something from it. Some people might just want to look at the pictures, and I've got some beautiful landscape pictures in there of Iceland, oh, my other love. And then somebody might be interested in the visual journal and really go in close and see if they can read my writing there. Well, some might be just wanting the essays, and I know it might not appeal to everyone, because some people like neat boxes, and I understand that, because there's a safety in the neat boxes. But we only live once, man. Let's just take some risks. Yeah. And that scares me, but it also like, yeah, let's do it.
Yes. I am so excited to read more about that, and just so grateful that I had the honor of being in this writing group with you, and yeah, to know your work. Is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe I haven't asked about yet?
That's a good question. Well, I'm glad that you haven't asked about the future. What does the future hold for you, Sheree?
I have given up on that.
Because this is a really difficult time in so many different ways. Okay, we've talked about coronavirus, and I've mentioned the Black Lives Matter uprising, challenging systemic racism, and really, I think we need a revolution. I do think we need a revolution, but and this is, I'm with people. I'm out there. I'm not marching. I'm doing it with my pen, or my voice is my weapon in that sense. And it's uncertain times. And if someone had said to me, this is what's going to be happening in 2020, I would have tried to run for the hills because of not having that control and not knowing what my next step is. I mean, I've mentioned my visual journaling, and that's where I do all my dreaming. That's where all my plans go down, and then the steps to get there. And it happens. I bring these things to fruition through my visual journaling. It's the case. It's a safe space. And yeah, I had plans for 2020, but they've all gone. And my visual journaling isn't so much where I'm dreaming now. It's more a case where I'm being now, and I'm capturing the day-to-day, what's happening. And that's cool. It's a case of my whole world is being in the present now, because that's where I am happy, and it's all that I've got. Yeah. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know if we're going to hit a second wave. We don't know if I'm not even going to do predictions there, because I could go all dark and twisted. But and in the past, that would have scared me. I would have been felt that I was standing on shaky ground and no foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there now, and I'm not. I'm not panicking. I'm not running for the hills. I'm just being here now. And that feels such a transformation for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you didn't ask me about what's happening in the future, because I cannot foretell what's happening in the future. But I'm enjoying now. I mean, like, it's hashtag radical joy, because it seems so radical to be joyful now. And I'm not doing it in a disrespectful way. I know people have died. I know people are suffering. I know people are still going through difficult times. And I acknowledge that, and I support as I can. But it shouldn't be a case that we should feel guilty for leaning in to those drops of joy. Those drops of joy.
Sheree, that is some deep shit. I'm so happy that you shared it. And I'm so glad that I didn't ask you about the future, because I feel exactly the same. But it's also just touching on the future, and the here-ness and the now-ness was exactly what I needed today. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with everyone, because I think it's so important. Yeah, it's such an important reminder. So thank you for giving that to us.
Thank you for allowing me to come on and sharing. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So before we go, can you tell us where people can find you and how they can work with you at the moment?
Okay. So you introduced me as Sheree Matthews, but I actually have two names. Ooh. Sheree Mack, M-A-C-K. That's the writer in me. And you can find me on Instagram at Sheree Mack Writes. Yeah. And then we have Sheree Angela Matthews, who's the artist. And you can find her on the website, livingwildstudios.com, or on Instagram at Living Wild Studios. And then the new baby on the block is the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. And you can, did you see there? I thought I went into that sort of like podcast voice. And you can find more about that at the Earth, Sea, Love website, which is earthsealove.com, and on Instagram at Earth, Sea, Love, and Twitter, Earth, Sea, Love 1.
And we'll link to all of that in the show notes as well, in case someone didn't catch that. Thank you so much, Sheree. So many like access points to your magic. So I'm really excited people get to explore that. Again, thank you so much from my heart. This was such a beautiful conversation, and I wish everyone could have seen your face. But yeah, it was great. Great talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yarrow. Thank you.